Good afternoon, everyone. Today we remember and show our respect for the sacrifice and courage of all those who have answered the call of their country in times of war, and in particular those who have served in the Australian Defence Forces on active service from the Boer War down to Afghanistan, including those who are currently serving within and outside our borders. We remember too all those of every nation, whether service personnel or civilians whose lives will never be the same as a result of conflict and war. As we stop to reflect and to remember on the sacrifice of so many, we do not glorify war. Rather, we reflect on the awfulness, the death, the destruction, the futility and the horror that conflict and war brings. I have no doubt that every serving member and every veteran here today would be the first to say that their greatest wish and their most fervent prayer is that their children and this nation may never have to witness the horrors of war again. Of course, in a perfect world, there are no wars, no aggression and no requirement to maintain defence forces. But unfortunately, this is not a perfect world. So as we reflect on this and on our remembering today, let's remember our desire for peace and our duty as human beings to promise that we will work towards finding alternatives to war in order to make our world a more peaceful place and to do all we can to ensure that wars will never happen again. For this is God's will for humanity. The prophet Micah writes, "What does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" Clearly, peace and justice and harmony are God's will for humanity. And thanks be to God, there are people in every generation who have recognised this and who have done what they can to achieve peace. From the very beginning, in the times of ancient Greece, every 4 years the Olympic Games united the city-states. A truce created temporary peace throughout Greece so that these games could take place. In the Middle Ages, the Christian Church introduced a custom called the Truce of God, which limited fighting to certain days of the week. Not that I'm sure that's quite the point of what we're talking about, but at least it was in the right direction. In the late 19th century, the Swedish chemist Alfred B. Nobel, who regretted the wartime deaths and injuries caused by his invention, dynamite, set up a fund to award annual prizes, including one for promoting world peace. After World War I and World War II, as you well know, organisations were established to work towards peace and justice. In the 60s and 70s, people of my generation brought the issue of peace to the forefront in peace marches and demonstrations, a practice which continues today. And in our own time, there are many individuals and groups working towards disarmament, the reduction of world debt, just and sustainable use of the world's resources, and the cessation of exploitative regimes. All of these are evidence of people's will for peace. But still, conflict and war goes on. Wouldn't you think that with all the wonders and advances of science and technology, with all the libraries of the centuries available at our fingertips on the internet, with all the thousands of years of history available to us, that we human beings would have learned how to produce peace and goodwill among the nations? And yet here we are in the 21st century, still divided, still competitive, still greedy, still inventing new forms of warfare and still finding new reasons to go to war. Now this could be a cause for despondency, but days like today give us renewed hope. It is so heartening, so wonderful to see the increasing number of people, and especially young people, attending these services and marches. They are hearing firsthand the desire for peace, especially from those who participated both in the horror and the sacrifice of war. Perhaps it will be our younger generations, those young kids that are here today, that will finally find the answers and bring peace to our world. Perhaps at last the world will truly take on board the message of Jesus Christ, the message of love and peace and justice for all. For this we pray. Gracious God, lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead us from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, and our universe. Amen.
Thank you, Julie. Could I now call on the Galveston Men's Choir for a rendition?
Thank you for having us here this year. It is appropriate, as we hear in Rathmines at the home of the Catalinas, that we sing a song for you this afternoon entitled Like an Eagle.
Like an eagle, I will soar above sun. Like an eagle I will race above the stars. I will fly to places yet unseen, go beyond my wildest dreams. Know that you are watching over me. Like an eagle I will race above the clouds. Like an eagle I will fly. Like an eagle I will fly. I'm gonna fly the highest mountain. Fly. I'm gonna fly above the clouds. Like an eagle, I will fly.
Holy Father, we pray for all who have served in the defence of our nation, the soldiers, sailors and members of the Air Force. Bless all members of the armed forces. Defend them in danger, give them courage to meet all occasions with discipline and loyalty. May those who now serve continue in the traditions established by those who have gone before them, to the honour of your name. Amen.
During the war, on and off in this place, and as I've written a few strange poems about things of this kind, that I might take this section rather than having. I'm sorry it doesn't compare to what the choir is, I know. However, I am representing the choir in this particular item. I've been asked to speak about this poem, and I will do it in a minute. We gladly recognise, of course, all of the other people and services, the Army, the Navy, as well as the rest of the Air Force. There is no need to express how completely central this place, Rathmines, was to us who were part of the family in the years in which it was first begun. There were numerous forward bases from which we operated, of course, later on, in Moresby, at Cairns and Bowen, but this place alone, this place of Rathmines, has been central in our identity. There would not be one Catalina person who did not pass through this place. Here formed his crew, or learnt his trade, and to which he returned consistently as his home base. And in this situation, we were almost immediately on active service once we arrived. 72 years ago, on the 25th of May 1943, as many of you will remember, a group of us arrived here, and the very next day were detached to be pallbearers for the crew of a plane which had crashed at Nelson's Bay. They were practicing that particularly difficult operation of landing in open water, which was always a very dangerous matter. They crashed, and so our introduction on that date was to be the pallbearers the next day to go to Sandgate Cemetery. At the end of the war, there was another plane which left from here and went to Lord Howe Island and crashed, again in part of a training exercise related to this place. From this place here, in December 1944, every available plane flew on a raid to Manila in the Philippines at the request of General MacArthur to join 24 others and bottle up the Japanese flag as he wanted to return to the Philippines. To this one place alone, Rathmines remains the home base. No other was the central focus of our existence. There would not be one Catalina person who does not regard this place as home. And these memorial walls that we know here, and further down where the assembly place is. We're glad that the four squadrons of 11, 20, 42 and 43 are represented still by the 11 squadron members who are here today and endorse them in their work. The poem is, the Rathmines Catalina is this quiet place of beauty now to be remembered. This sparkling water, those nearby hills, tight eucalypt stacks. A rath is a fort, an ancient structure from old Celtic days, built to defend the people wantonly attacked. So here, in years gone by, this fort of Rathmines throbbed with the roar of labouring engines and the buoyant life of valiant warriors, training as crews together their encounters against enemy fleets, close hidden in far harbours, waiting to strike and take our homeland for their own design. Here too sound echoes of those larrikin days and series, those faces we remember, friends for whom we grieve. This is the place, so tangible and vibrant. They were here, and we can almost catch a glimpse of them and hear those old cat songs, the shouted greeting, a genuine grin. But then, there are so many who have not returned to greet us. Lying in unknown places now, some foreign ports, vanished without trace in seascapes wild with storm, or blasted from the sky on treacherous mining runs. Sure, there were those who made it through the conflict and played their part to build this nation's place in a new world of hopes and dreams, new confrontation. But come what may, in days ahead, to threaten or enthrall this land, we will, by this quiet, consecrated place, remember those youthful heroes and that gallant man, lest we forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony today is particularly poignant, given today is the 99th anniversary of the deployment of the ANZAC. As we approach the centenary of the event in Gallipoli, where the spirit of the ANZAC was born, I think it's important to try and understand how that tradition has impacted the men and women of Australia and what it has meant to them. Given we hold the service today in the former officers' mess at Rathmines, I've tried to look at how the ANZAC tradition was related to the men and women of Rathmines during World War II. As well as remembering what they did, it's important to think how their actions relate to all of us today. What has always struck me as I speak with those who served on and in support of Catalina flying boats, taking the fight to the enemy in the Pacific, is how lightly they regarded their contribution. And the idea that they were somehow courageous seems rather strange to them. Despite the sacrifices they made, Gallus remains quiet for two of those, returning from 18-hour missions where they've flown to the tropics, thinking nothing has happened to them. They've avoided that merciless ground fire and the Japanese fighters. Only when they land back on the water they find the aircraft is full of poles and they're on the sand. Despite those sacrifices, they were simply standing up for the Australian culture and way of life. That Australian irreverence and readiness to try something new. The welcoming of those who are different and the willingness to laugh at ourselves as well as our mates. These things were threatened and had to be defended. It was simply the right thing to do. Those pilots, navigators, air gunners, maintainers and support staff took the long view of all that was good about Australia and about what was needed to be done to protect their country and their way of life. Part of our ANZAC activities are sombre, as we reflect on the lives cut short and the horrors of war. But I think we should remember that the men and women of Rathmines, operating, maintaining and supporting the Catalina aircraft, were anything but sombre. I know of 2 Catalina aircraft that crashed on takeoff because they had too many crates of beer on board, no way to take them. I'm aware of a CO who, when returning from a mission to be told the bar was shut, pulled out his service revolver and shot a hole in the cap of the bar officer, who was told to open the bar. They were not only defending the Australian way of life, they were living the Australian way of life. What their sacrifice and achievements led to was the continuation of Australian culture, the optimism of us all, and the undying conviction that we must live in a society that is free, just, and open. How do those actions and beliefs affect us all today? In one sense, it's easy for us in the service to relate to the ANZAC, to try and follow the example they set. We're sometimes called on to take part in operations, and it's easy for us to see the link between ourselves and the men and women of Rathmines. However, I think the ANZAC culture is just as relevant to wider society, and I'm always pleased to see the huge number of young people, both here today and at dawn services and marches across the country. How do you, along with me and the rest of my mates in the Royal Australian Air Force, live up to the ANZAC legend? For me, the best way to do that is firstly to recognise that they did what they did because of their belief of how outstanding Australia and the Australian way of life is. It was something worth preserving. They made the sacrifices they did not for themselves, but for people they could not know, for some who had not even yet been born. They did it for future Australians. If we recognise this belief, then we can begin to enact those aspects of Australian culture every day. Be that young man or woman who views your life with optimism despite the challenges. Remember that sense of fun and irony, that sense of irreverence that the men and women of Rathmines had. Be welcoming when new Australians come to your community. And remember every day we live in the finest nation in the Commonwealth and the world. Don't think of ANZAC as only a solemn, once-a-year reflection on the horrors of war and conflict, but rather behave every day as they did and embrace the Aussie way of life. To act in this way, you will be expecting their sacrifice through your life and your actions. And I can think of no better way to make their efforts, their courage and sacrifice worthwhile. So let's begin.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Father of all, we are your family and you call us to live together as brothers and sisters. Help us to overcome the barriers that divide people and nations one from another. Bless every effort being made to bring peace and understanding to the world, so that we may learn your ways and serve your will. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
The task of reading the well-known poem In Flanders Fields. And whilst we have been talking, of course, about different theatres of war and certainly the relationship of Rathmines to World War II, as we know, it is the 99th anniversary of the establishment of the ANZAC legend that largely saw it's being played out in Europe. And there's a very well-known poem in Flanders Fields that was penned by a Canadian officer, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. They know when it was. It was on May 3rd, 1915. They pretty well even know the hour in which it was written. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae had just officiated at the funeral of his friend Alex Helmer. And he was observed to have sat allegedly at the back of an ambulance and penning down some notes, and he subsequently threw those away. And some of his comrades retrieved the poem, and it was subsequently that year published, I believe, in Punch. It became one of the most famous poems commemorating war, certainly from the European experience. That poem went on to be used for propaganda purposes, to invoke people to join the military and to take up arms. And it's also recognised as the source. And I know many people here wearing poppies today, and of course the 11th every year, Remembrance Day, we use the poppy. That this is the poem that is alleged or reputed to have brought about the use of the poppy, is symbolic in that sense. Now, it's a difficult poem to read, and I know John Grimes is very concerned about my being able to deliver it with the correct cadence. So it's also a very moving poem, and I trust that I can do it justice. So, with my best endeavours.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who died, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
God,